Welcome to Acts of Awakening, a series of heartfelt conversations about the roles that we play, the masks that we wear, and the archetypes we embody. Acts of Awakening is a play place to unpack the moments in life that call us to change roles and dissolve masks, individuating us into the next version of ourselves. Together, we will explore the perspective of the cosmic play, inspiring soulful insights and a deeper understanding of the journey of becoming. Host Suri Sawyer is a certified death doula, Reiki healer, yoga guide, ancestral medicine practitioner, and multidimensional psychic. As a walking transmission, equal parts cosmic mirror, soul whisperer, and multidimensional midwife, she embodies the energy of a lucid dream, soft yet activating, grounded yet infinite. Suri weaves shadow and light without fear. Her essence feels like plant medicine incarnate. Her presence initiates recalibration and an invitation into introspection, remembrance, and sacred revolution. Now here's your host, Suri Sawyer.
Good day, beloved humans, and welcome to Acts of Awakening. I am Suri, and it is a genuine honor to be here with you today. I wonder how many of you guys are feeling the end of the snake year, the fire snake, and into the fire horse year, and the shedding that we've all been going through. Especially, I've been feeling it really intensely since the solstice on December 20th. Kim Princess, I just want to say hi. It's so good to see you, sweetheart. So the solstice seemed to kick something off, and then it's been a radical shed feeling like every day since. So I'm curious if you guys are experiencing the shedding that we're going through before we go running straight into the fire horse year. And if I sometimes in my psyche, I can hear horses running and I'm like, it's coming. Lisa, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching from Ontario, Canada. I almost said Canada. I hope you've got some sweaters and some socks on and maybe even a little bit of a beanie. So one of the things that I'd like to share today, before I came on, I pulled a card. And the card that I pulled is devotion. I wonder if you can see her. Parvati, devotion. So there's a book that goes with these cards, but I don't always look at the book. I usually just look at the word and pick up the essence of it. Presh, yes, you're feeling the shedding of the snake. Definitely the end. Absolutely. So devotion. As I was contemplating devotion, I also was contemplating dedication and decision-making. Devotion, dedication, and decision-making. And devotion in daily life. Devotion to the kinds of choices we make, devotion to the decisions that we make, devotion to something greater than ourselves. I think that's a really big aspect of devotion, is recognizing that we're part of something greater than us. Whatever it is that you prescribe to, if that's God, the ocean. One time I was talking to someone about a higher power, and he was like, so just anything that I believe that is greater than me? So could it be Batman? And I was like, listen, if you want to devote yourself to the concept of Batman, I guess no one will stop you. But devotion to something greater than yourself. And walking with devotion through each decision that we make, with the motivation inside to whatever it is that we choose to devote ourselves to. And as we move through the world and we're intimately interconnected to each other, everything I do affects all of reality in small ways and in big ways. So as I walk and make decisions, every footstep is a decision of devotion. Every breath is a decision of devotion. And my invitation to all of us, if you guys would like to take it, is to spend this day, the rest of today, in an act of devotion to love, to yourself, to the greater cosmic being motivated from the inside by love. And allowing each decision to be an act of devotion. Even picking up a cup of coffee and taking a sip can be an act of devotion and love. It's the energy through which you're motivating all of your actions. And I also am curious if you guys would like to put in the comments what you guys experience about devotion. For me today, the contemplation brought up decision making and how each decision can be motivated from a seat of devotion that is a reflective mirror of our interconnectedness with all things and God. So that is my explanation of it today. It's so good to see you, Arnie. Arnie, thank you so much for being here. Cindy, it's really beautiful to see you. Lisa, thank you so much for coming. It's such a blessing to have all of you here. So I'd like to introduce our guest now. She's a really beautiful human being, and she lives up here on the mountain in Costa Rica with me. And every time that I've had an opportunity to speak with her, she surprises me with her elegance, grace, beauty, and wisdom. And so the other day when we were speaking, I thought to myself, I'd like to introduce you to the people. So here's a little bit about Tsu-Yin. When Tsu-Yin Chang first took up meditation as a stress reduction tool during her 20s, she was shocked to find herself quickly pulled into a personal spiritual awakening journey. None of you have ever done that before, right? I'm just kidding. I know the audience I'm talking to. You guys all know that moment when suddenly you're pulled into a radical spiritual awakening. Arnie, I know you do. Within a short time, she ended a healthy relationship, shelved a fulfilling psychotherapy practice, and headed to Southeast Asia to ordain as a Buddhist nun. She continues to embody what she learned through deep states of meditation, transcendent experiences of consciousness, and the difficulty of being human. She is passionate about helping others reclaim their intuitive knowing through normalizing their natural psychic capacities. She seeks to remind others, both personally and professionally, that when our expansion and growth is no longer surpassed by our egoic fragmentation or wounding, we come into full alignment with the universal intelligence and its impulse to create. And that the notion of love is both the most simple and ambitious lesson in our human journey. So I would like to welcome to the show now, Tsu-Yin. Thank you for being here.
Ooh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry.
Absolutely. So in Acts of Awakening, one of the things that I like to focus on is the individuation process or the initiation process. And you even said it in your bio. In my 20s, I meditated as a stress relief and found myself pulled into a spiritual awakening and or a massive initiation or individuation from what you had previously known. So the first thing I want to start with is, how many years did you spend in school and building your psychotherapy practice before you decided to dismantle it?
Well, I definitely didn't consciously decide to dismantle it. First of all, it was dismantled for me against my egoic will, which is the only way that a true spiritual opening can go in my book. At least that's how it had to work for me. I had to learn the hard way, I think. But yeah, I did the whole thing. I went to, I'm a child of Taiwanese immigrants. So really the model of success there and achieving the American dream is pretty straightforward. It's make really good grades, get a really high GPA, compete with all of your classmates to get into the best schools. And I did that for undergrad as well as graduate school. And yeah, and in some ways, the first 25 years of my life, I'm in my 40s now, but the first 25 years were kind of easy. They were kind of, I felt, yeah, kind of that everything that I wanted, I could get. And if I didn't have it yet, it was just a matter of dedicating myself to it and working harder towards that. And that seemed to be like the model that the world worked as for me for, yeah, I would say 2.5 decades. And then I came across the first time where I couldn't control the circumstances. And no matter what I did, it was a situation with work, my first job out of grad school. And I was working with suicidal teenagers that were in foster care homes and just in community mental health. So really under supported. And this was in Seattle, Washington. And I just being, the real wide-eyed, like open-hearted being that I was at the time was just like, oh, I just need to work harder or figure out a way to help these kids. And
Mhm.
and then it was the first time that I couldn't do
Yeah.
what I felt needed to be done. And yeah, it was pretty clear downward spiral from there. So yeah, 2.5 decades.
You said something really profound, against my egoic will.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Can we play with that?
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like this audience that's here watching, I love all of you guys so much. Most of them are mediums themselves or have had spiritual awakenings themselves. And so
Okay.
that line, I was like, I feel like everyone watching can really resonate with this concept of like, yeah, my ego was kicking and screaming. And some part of me, maybe inside, actually knew what was happening. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the structures of my personality did not go lightly. So I'm curious if you would expand on that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to, because that's the structures of the egoic personality not going lightly. I feel like that's the general path of my own spiritual awakening. Of course, it's gotten easier over the decades, but I can, even just 2 nights ago, I was just like, whoa, for the first time, I feel like there's some sort of like deep thing that's happening, like strong resistance. And in the past, I would have called it like my ego is tantruming, but so much of my journey now has been around opening into love and self-compassion and seeing just the soft wounding and the needs that egoic structure and that self is calling for. But yeah, against the egoic will, that's kind of how I see everything in the world now. There's kind of our personality structures that we have been either that have been inherited or learned or indirectly passed down. And those are the ways in which we navigate the world, right? Trying to
Mhm.
stay safe and figuring out how to get what we want so we can manage the world in ways that seem beneficial to us. And then there's this whole other paradigm that was completely foreign to me, unknown to me for many
Mhm.
decades of my life, but is increasingly the paradigm in which I want to live, and the one that I feel the most free, the most joyful, the most loving.
Mhm.
And yeah, it has taken many decades to just get clear on what actually is the egoic self and how has had it been hijacking my life, even though I
Mhm.
thought it was getting me everything that I wanted, and it did get everything it wanted, right?
Yeah.
But just recognizing that that's not the only thing.
You kind of already answered the question, but I would love to hear what your current understanding and description of what the ego even is. My perspective is there's a lot of information out there about what the ego is. And sometimes I hear people even throwing around like, you're not operating from your heart, you're operating from your ego. And you're like,
Mm.
maybe, but is that even a bad thing, right?
Mm-mm.
Depending on how
Yes.
you're interacting with the ego. And the for myself, I in my teachings and in my work, I encourage people to not see the ego as an enemy, but actually as a really beautiful friend. That
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we're both simultaneously the creator. That's what's within us. The,
Yes.
the sacred I, the observer, is the creator within, and the ego is its creation, right? So don't hate your
Yes.
creation or like
Mm-hmm.
deem your creation poor or bad. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
those are some of my perspectives on the ego. And I would really love to hear, based on your wisdom and experience, what you perceive the ego is. I also wanted to acknowledge Arnie. Arnie, yes, meditation is so valuable. And thank you, Lisa, Tsu-Yin's story is beautiful, and we'll hear more of it. And Kim Princess, thank you for loving it. And the ego can protect us also. I really perceive that that's what all the ego is trying to do, is really keep us safe. Sometimes it's maladaptive, of course. And sometimes it's trying to run a program that's outdated, but its intention is really seated in like, how do I keep me safe? So yes, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah,
Take it
yeah.
away, Tsu-Yin.
Yes, thank you so much for asking this question. It's so important because so many of our spiritual traditions seem to demonize the ego, right? And I know that there's a period of my own journey in my 20s when I got pulled into this dramatic spiritual awakening where I misperceived at that time that the goal of everything was then to destroy the ego, right? Like, yes, ego death. Let's like get rid
Right?
of that thing.
Launching
Like,
war on your own self. Yes.
And of course that's actually a really reasonable reaction when you first realize for the first time, right, that there has been a set of patterns and structures that have been completely dictating your behavior unconsciously, really, and that you don't actually have any control over it, even though the whole time it created this sense that you were in total control, right? So, from an egoic perspective, the ego can only divide against itself and do that as a first course of action to self-correct, right? And for me, that by itself was such an important phase to go through, to just see how the ego does things, how it tries to help and to resolve things, even if it's like the highest spiritual intention, right? But to answer your question more succinctly, yeah, I don't feel that we would be able to be incarnated into these lives to do what we're doing, right? To realize the spiritual self, to find the divinity within us and everybody and everything without the egoic structure. This is kind of like the like, there's movies about like kind of like going into space and like going on these adventures with these like crazy like space suits, spaceship contraptions. Well, this is like what the ego is like that, but when we're coming down into Earth, which I now actually view as an even more daring, adventurous, maybe like maniacal undertaking to
Yes.
come from like out there into the density of this existence and this plane. So we need that ego and we especially when we're young need it to be like brusque and defensive and protective, because that's the density in which we've incarnated into, right? So yeah, all of these ways in which basically the personality learns to protect itself, and it's really needed and really useful, and at a certain point maybe loses its usefulness. And that's when we can have the safety, right? And the opening to say, okay, do we actually need these defensive, protective structures, especially if they're actually not serving us or the people that we love, right? Can we actually start opening to the possibility that there's different ways of doing things, of existing in this world?
Absolutely. I love the imagery of a soul coming in and like putting on its whole spacesuit and being like, okay, this is how we survive in this environment. And I'm in full agreement around the ego being necessary for us to even, we could not have this conversation if you didn't have an ego and I didn't have an ego. I wouldn't even be able to
No.
respond to you, right?
Yes, and I love your egoic self. It's what makes you you and you individual, right? You're
Yes.
not like anybody else I know. So that's your egoic structure. That's the personality that has been created along with the soul, right?
I learned a while back that for myself, I started to view my ego as my favorite art project.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God. So like, what can we paint with? And like, who's got scissors? I've got craft paper, like, what can we put in here? Like, what could it possibly become if we're,
Yeah.
and if something is not working for me, like if I start painting with a color that I decide that I actually, that color is actually not pleasing me right now, or, that color doesn't actually reflect my inner being as well as I thought that it did. So I'm actually going to erase that and start with a new color.
Mm. Mm. I love that because that speaks to where you are in the depth of your journey, right? You recognize the malleability of the ego. Like this is not like a fixed thing that is definitively who we are, right?
Mhm.
It's this expression, this manifestation of something within that is almost formless, right? So it's like
Mhm.
that formless sense of our essential self is what then gets expressed outwardly as the ego, as the outward reality that we see. So the
Mhm.
fact that you are able to kind of see yourself as the artist, right? And the egoic structure as the creation just speaks to, yeah, your capacity to have been able to disidentify from the ego, right? I love
Mhm.
that.
And it's fun sometimes to witness parts of my ego come up, especially in a triggering moment where I hear all the things she wants to do. And I'm like, oh, honey, listen, yeah, slashing those tires sounds like it would be very satisfying. Like, I hear you. We're not going to do that though. But thank you so much for serving that one up. Like, wow, that's intense, right? And getting to observe certain things that are in there and some that are super old and haven't been
Mhm.
triggered in a long time. Before we came on the show, I was sharing with Tsu-Yin that I recently had an experience that mirrored a previous experience from 10 years ago. So I was feeling and seeing things in myself that I hadn't revisited in almost 10 years. And it was very interesting to be like, wow, like one, I can see how much I've grown in those 10 years. Two, oh, I can see that there's still like a residue of a previous operating system in there. And as the artist and the art piece, instead of allowing my actions to follow the prescription that was written 10 years ago, I was able to read the script and be like, well, I tried that last time and I didn't really like the fruit of that. So, sweet ego, we tried that last time. Let's get curious about what else is possible right now. Is there
Mm,
something else that's possible for us right now? And
mm.
turns out there's a billion numbered doors on the horizon now, which is the future you're choosing before you go dying. Like, what are we up to? Let's get creative. Let's get curious. We have, again, like I got craft paper. Tsu-Yin, do you have scissors? I got glue, boo boo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that so much. I love that so much because it speaks to, I think, what one of our most prized capacities is as human beings, which is to actually see, to have this meta level awareness, right? Where we can see the 10-year old programming, we can see the habitual pattern, we can see the momentum, and we can say, oh, that's not something that I would like to engage in, or maybe just let's try something else different,
Mhm.
right? And to recognize like, okay, wow, there is not just the possibility for me choosing something different, but that one program or that one old choice was like one out of like an infinite number of possible
Mhm.
reactions to this situation, and can lead to an infinite number of different outcomes and fulfilling creations, right, for
Mhm.
you and whoever else is involved. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but when I kind of like shift the script like that, especially with somebody with whom I've had like a really strong ingrained script, like my family, right?
Mhm.
It's like it allows them, it gives them permission to be like, whoa, like what's that? Maybe I can do this too. And so then
Mhm.
something comes up that's like so out of the ordinary possibility or the historic possibility, right?
Mhm.
And it's just you're suddenly both standing in this beautiful new space where anything is possible because you've just like completely discarded this old way of being and opened yourself to, again, magic, right? Infinite possibility.
Magic. Yes.
Yeah. So
It
yeah,
is magic. This
yeah,
this way of interacting with the creator and the creation that we are,
yeah.
that to me does feel like the point of magic.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
I feel like yeah, I use the word magical like probably every other day as I'm talking to somebody or in like a WhatsApp text to somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, how's it going? Oh, it's so magical. Or, oh my God, this magical thing happened. And it doesn't, it feels very accurate, right?
Mhm.
Because from the egoic perspective, it just is like pure alchemy. It's like, wow, you just turned that thing into gold, right?
Yeah.
But from kind of a divine perspective, it's almost like ordinary, right? It's almost like the way that things have the capacity to work if we only knew, right? If we only trusted, if we only were able to lean into, right?
Mhm.
And I love kind of hearing about other people's experiences with that because it's just so it's delightful to hear that other people are accessing that way of being, and it's also self-confirmatory, when sometimes we kind of slip out of the magical realm and into this more drab like hammer and nails and
Yeah.
routine and a sense of separate self.
Mhm.
And then when you hear again of magic being reflected in these other beings in which we're sharing our
Mhm.
reality and our world with, it's like, oh yeah, no, yeah, that's possible. That we can all be doing that right
Right.
now, right?
Yes, and I imagine a world where we're all accessing that capacity to, I call it live streaming my soul.
Aha, yeah, I love that.
Right? And, okay, I wanna Kim Princess, it's okay to change your color, no guilt needed. It is what you want and need at the time, devoid of all options. Yes, Kim Princess. Again, Kim Princess, I'm loving everything you bring to the table. And then Christy Wilson, good morning from Utah, baby. I'll see you in April. What part of Utah are you in? Will you tell me? And then Vivian, beautiful. That is growth. Thank you. Magic makes life. Kim Princess, my ego is going to go ahead and say that you are accurate. um, and we need to use the word magical more. I agree. And Tsu-Yin was just sharing how she uses it in everything. I'd also like to throw another word in there that I think we should be using more often, which is delicious. Like that's magically
Mm,
delicious.
yes, yes. I can't
Mhm.
remember what text I sent you earlier this this week, sorry, but your response
Yes.
was yum, Y-U-M in capital letters. And I was like, I love that. And it had nothing to
Yes.
do with food, right? It was just like, wow, this is so nourishing and nurturing
Mhm.
and appealing. And yes,
Mhm.
I want that in my life, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so before I read the comments, and Melinda, my sweet darling, we are not doing readings today, but just like all of the Acts of Awakening shows, think of this as an exploration of our collective consciousness, and literally the whole conversation is an opportunity for healing, especially this one where if you're paying attention and you're receiving what we're saying, there may be a reorganization of your egoic self that reorients you to the creator and the creation. So,
Mhm.
although we're not doing specific readings, this experience is an opportunity for wholeness. So, please stay tuned and please be with us. Um, and before I read the comments, I was like, wow, there's 3 questions I want to ask you. And my brain was like, which channel shall I go down? Because there's a billion number doors on the horizon.
Right? Yeah.
But the first one that I want to bring forward is this concept of script and prescription and ego. And I
Mhm.
love doing the thing of like word breakdown. because
Mm-hmm.
pre
Yes, the etymology.
prescript, like prescript, like this is the prescript. This is a script based on the things that happened previously. And if I rely on my prescript, my prescription, the
Yeah.
prescript, then I'm only broadcasting into my present moment everything that has happened before based on the knowledge of everything that I think I know or how I interpreted
Exactly.
something that happened before. And if
Exactly.
I hope to create a real shift in my experience, I need to stop pulling from the prescript and
Mhm.
release the concept that there even is a script and allow myself to like live stream my soul and let that become my ego in the present now.
Yes, so well said. I love that metaphor of the live streaming of the soul, right? Because
Mhm.
there's no preparation. It was really interesting because I had not heard of your show before the moment you said, Tsu-Yin, you should be on my show. Will you be on my show? I was like, sure. And I had no idea what it was. I had no idea who your audience was. I had no idea why you wanted to talk to me on it. And I was just like, sure. And I have not done any preparation at all. So, and I think it's going beautifully, right? So it's like this is a real life example of just what can happen in the trust of the live stream, right? When you are able to allow to fall away any fears or any needs to control the outcome,
Yeah.
right? And to because that's what's needed when letting go of the old ways, right? Because what we're actually doing is being willing to venture forth. That even that is not accurate. It's really standing firmly in the present moment, right? Where there
The place
is
where future and past converge. That's the only
exactly,
place. Yes.
exactly. There's no future that you have to prepare for. It is all just now, right? So
Mhm.
there's no frightening outcome
Mhm.
that could happen if you didn't, yeah, try to figure out what was going to happen ahead of time and
Right.
then steer it towards your desired way of whatever your ego thinks is going to be like the fulfilling outcome, right? Which
Right.
ego never knows. My ego never actually knows what
She's
it.
beautiful, but she's limited.
Yeah. It's like she's so limited. It's like when you're using the old map, it's the map based on the paradigm of that level of consciousness that you've
Mhm.
just been able to with diligence and lovingness and your own intelligence scrape together over time, but it is actually not even close to what the full picture is,
The
right?
fullest. Yeah.
The fullness of everything that is. So being able to have the guts, at least for me, it took a long time to just kind of put that down and be willing to say, okay, what other way is there to exist, right?
Yeah.
And it's to be utterly present. It's through presence and being and allowing.
Mhm.
mm, it's not even saying allowing that to guide me is also inaccurate. It's being in presence and being in full receipt of whatever then comes in that state,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like when we are able to, yeah, do away with the old scripts, it's so freeing. It's so
Mhm.
freeing. Not only does it open up the possibility, right? Because you're not bringing the old historic baggage or I have some guides that talk about ordering off the old menu. It's like just
Yeah.
imagine if like you sit down in a restaurant and they actually have these amazing new specials and all of these delicious things that you could be eating and experiencing, but you want to order off the old menu, right? And that's what we're
Mhm.
doing every day, each
Mhm.
time, even when we, come down and into the living room maybe and meet a partner and see them with the eyes of the old, right? Our old
Yes.
perception. That's ordering off the old menu, right? Having some sort of expectation of even who this person is,
Right.
right? And let alone the interaction that you're going to have with them that morning. So
Right.
I think that this is a live streaming is a beautiful idea, and it is unlimited in
Mhm.
where it happens, in any situation.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Talking with you and exploring the consciousness is quite a fun game. Thank you for playing with me. And there's
Yeah.
a comment here, and I'd like to tie it in actually with my next question. So,
Sure.
Melinda, I want to see if you're still here because this is actually something that I'd like to tie in with you. And this concept, there's a lot going on in the world right now. Like when I think about our collective psyche, in certain aspects of our collective psyche, a storm is raging and the waves are massive. And when we don't know how to like hold ourselves, earlier Tsu-Yin said, Kelly said, "How are you?" And Tsu-Yin said, "I'm feeling buoyed," right? And I often describe myself as like, I feel like I'm inside my ark. Like, yes, the waters are raging around me, but like my boat's good. Like, I'm feeling fortified from the inside of myself. Another way that I like to describe it is like sometimes water can be structured or unstructured. And when water is structured, it's full. We call it living water. When you drink structured water, it makes you healthier. So when we can structure ourselves like a water cell that's structured, we're fortified and buoyed from the inside. And the tempest can rage around us. And don't get me wrong, it can be very uncomfortable. And when each of us chooses to be a fortified cell in the body of one, we can do a lot more on earth and a lot more in reality together that way. And I also realized that some of the things that are happening on the planet are, like you said, messing with my energy. And yes, absolutely. And that's why it's important to become structured and fortified. And this is the place I'd like to take it to next is Tsu-Yin or Su yes, Tsu-Yin. I always want to call you Su-Lin, and for that I apologize.
Yeah, most people do. It's okay.
Okay, Tsu-Yin, you were referencing alchemy before and talking about spiritual gold, which I think is interesting because just before our call, I wrote out a whole post that I'm going to post on my social media later talking about spiritual gold. And so I was like, the weather is synchronistic today. Like,
yes, beautiful.
So, Melinda, if you're still here, this is for you. So, my advice with a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, the news about the war, the news about the Epstein files, like, yes, information is being pumped through the system that is going to affect your energy and that is going to affect your emotional state and possibly affect the way you see reality. And it's serious, but keep on smiling. So I would love to hear your perspective on creating alchemy around some of the things that are going on the planet.
Yeah, I think that that's such an important question, and actually the highest potential for all of us, right?
Mhm.
So in any situation in which perhaps a dense frequency or a dense energy or dense event is happening,
Mhm.
either within us internally, or we're witnessing it in somebody else or among two other people or among the world or our politicians. It's a tremendous opportunity to lift, right? And I'm not saying like lift, like keep that down here and I'm going to be up here all
Right.
light and rainbow, right? That's where we're beyond that. Our superpower is actually even more marvelous, even
Mhm.
more dramatic, even more powerful, that we can actually stay right there with the thing
Mhm.
and kind of re-know it and re-see it, right? In this, from the perspective of the we are one, that everything is connected, that at its essential level, even smaller than the atomic level, we're the same substance
Mhm.
as the thing that is either worrying us or scaring us or overwhelming us, right? And so
Mhm.
if we can kind of have the fortification in our arc, that's when it's really easy. Not really easy, but easier, right?
Yes. It does take a little work. Yes, for sure.
This did take several decades for me to hone, and I'm still doing it. It's a work in
Yeah.
progress.
Daily
But
devotion, daily devotion.
absolutely, moment to moment until I die, right? It's like if we can, what I think of it as essentially is frequency maintenance, right? That we
Mhm.
each have the capacity, as well as, if you want to look at it in a different way, maybe even responsibility, right? To be aware of our frequency, to decide where it's going to vibrate, right? And then to allow that vibration to inform the rest
Mhm.
of the world. And it's very powerful. It's not just, our dog feels it or our partners feel it or our community. It's like literally everything is connected in this collective way,
Mm.
right? So anytime that what are ways that I can tend to my frequency? It's anything that comes up for me, fear, right? Any sort of sadness, difficulty, sense of separation, sense of judgment. I'm doing everything I can to allow it and to feel it and to process it and welcome it. And so that's the healing of that frequency. And then so naturally we get buoyed. We are the energy that's not that, right? So it's a
Mhm.
sense of buoying. And when we do that, well, that doesn't just impact us and help us. It literally is lifting the entire collective,
It's
right?
spreading. Right.
Yes.
It's spreading.
Yeah. Yeah. So to be able to just understand like how powerful we are through this alchemizing, transmuting capacity that we
Mhm.
have as divine souls, right? And then to say, okay, like maybe I have the interest or capacity or power to tend to that, right? Either through, I don't know, like a spiritual practice can be something as simple as sitting every morning with a cup of lemon water, hot lemon water,
Yes.
right? For a few
Yes.
minutes, or just being quiet for 10 minutes, or, it doesn't have to be some grand, like meditate for 13 hours a day, which is a phase of my life that I went through. Not everybody has to do that. I
Mhm.
egoically had to, I think. But just the conscious recognition, right, that it is possible to shift our frequency will be the
Mhm.
thing that fortifies us and that creates the arc that you're talking about.
Thank you so much. I love the correlation between our frequency and our ability to be fortified. There's so much
Mhm.
truth for me. There's a lot of truth in that. And even
Yes.
experimenting with my frequency, uh,
Hmm.
on topic, off topic, on topic. I did this experiment one time with my body posture. And I noticed a direct correlation between slouching and the frequency of my thoughts were much lower. They started getting
Yeah.
self depreciating as I slouched. And when I
Hmm.
sat up, all of a sudden it was like, bing, like it was. So, so I was playing around with the different degrees of my spine. And I
Hmm.
was like, whoa. And it was like very much like, okay, like turning the volume down to a lower frequency.
Yeah.
Okay, those are the thoughts that exist here. What happens if I come up here? Like, whoa. And it was such a radical, quick correlation. And
Yeah.
after I played
Yeah.
around with it, I got in the car and I was driving. And all of a sudden,
Hmm.
my thoughts started to get really like self depreciating. And then I was like, wait, oh, I'm slouching. And so it was such a cool, that day for whatever reason was like an awakening for me. But that was such a correlation just between the body and the quality of thought.
Yeah, I love that as well as the experimenting attitude that you took. And to see that there's our bodies are, again, everything in this physical outer world is an outpicturing of our
Yeah.
inner consciousness, right? So it's interesting, even setting up for this little interview, I am sitting in such a way in which my back is quite far from the back of the chair.
Mhm.
And in the past, probably years ago, I would have been like, oh no, what if I get tired? I have to be able to da da da. But I immediately was just like, no, if I want to bring the highest to this interview, I'm not going to be slouching on my chair in any moment, right?
Mhm.
And that's just a recognition as I've become more sensitive to energy over the years that when I am actually running a high frequency, let's just put it that way, then the body naturally will, it's like the
Yeah.
Kundalini response, right?
Yes.
So it's like it's a really beautiful way also too in which I tend to my frequency and maintain it. It's like I am envisioning kind of clearing all of the chakras so that so the energy can just be straight, right? And the channel
Mhm.
can just be flowing. And that's
Right.
literally what it feels like because I've become so clairsentient, which I can feel energy, all sorts of energy around me and other people's and my own, that literally is what's happening, that the energy, it's not just like a mind thing that I'm doing where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't slouch. It's like literally the energy creates this incredible posture that's in alignment with alignment to the divine.
Mm. Hey guys that are watching, if you haven't already taken the cue, sit up, straighten the spine, make yourself long, see what happens. See what happens when you create spaciousness inside the vessel. For me, it feels
Yeah.
really good.
Yes,
And
me too.
um, okay, sorry, I got distracted by my own spaciousness. I was like, "Ooh, there's spaciousness in here." I wanted to comment because I really like it's come up, I think, 3 different times in our conversation so far, but we've been touching on the interconnectedness of all things, which for me has been one of the biggest tools for living a life of devotion and right relation with myself and with the world is the deep, not knowledge, like having a knowledge that everything is interconnected is one thing, but feeling the gnosis base of everything is interconnected and the butterfly effect is not a joke, right?
Right.
And that getting down into the atomic level and realizing, oh yeah, like we actually are all vibrating in the same fabric, and how that affects each other. I've noticed it a lot in more intimate relationships, and like you were saying, being very clairsentient. I realized being very close with people that they can be on the other side of the world. I haven't spoken to them in months, but all of a sudden I'll start feeling sick, like very sick. But I'm not sick. I just am like, why do I feel sick? And then I call the person and then I'm like, oh, I want to talk to so and so. And then I find out that they have a flu, right? And I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So, and then I feel better. It was just like that connectedness that we shared, that psychic
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
somatic and even quantum entanglement, right?
Yep.
Or if
Exactly.
someone that I'm very close with is going through a season of depression, I feel it. And it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have to check myself and be like, is that like we're all interconnected? So yes, it's my feeling, but is that my feeling? Like where is that from? Whence does that come? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if I'm aware that their state of being can come in like that toward me, then my state of being is doing the same to them, which brings a much higher level of accountability for what we're doing with our frequency and our
Yeah.
state of being. And I'm
Yes.
curious if you
Yes.
have any thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. A really salient question because as we continue all evolving together, we're all just going to get more sensitive to that interconnection, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's really important too to recognize that this this oneness, this interconnection is not anything mystical or special. It's just literally what happens.
Yeah.
It
Right.
literally is. And then you begin to perceive it is what happens, right? It
Right.
already is. And then you begin to be like, oh wait, like my partner was having these nightmares last night and I know what the nightmares are, I could feel them,
Yeah.
right? And it's so on that level, I do think that it is useful and interesting to think about, accountability, right? And
Mhm.
how all of the energy that we're putting out, we usually think about it in terms of actions or speech, right? We don't want to we're taught to not say anything unless we have something nice to say, or we don't want to, rain on people's parades, and, all sorts of ways in which we societally understand the impact that we have on those that we love, or just those that we share a community with, right? But this is kind of like taking it to the next level, because there's a recognition that it's not just speech, right? And also a recognition in higher systems and higher consciousnesses. We're just working telepathically. We don't even, the speech is such a limited kind of way of expression. And the way that the telepathy works is just through the interconnection of this field that we are, because at that level it's not even that we share, even though we're individualized within that greater field. We just all are the field. So this is actually a really amazing topic, because it kind of hooks into something that I'm really passionate about, which is just helping people understand that psychic abilities are not unusual, right?
They're actually the norm.
They're normal.
They're normal. And I love, Kim Princess was saying earlier that she had to learn over time to separate the two. And I wonder if this comes up in your work too, I don't need to teach anyone how to be psychic. I don't need to teach anyone how to be clairsentient. I'm more just pointing out that it's been happening the whole time.
Yes, exactly. And to be able to trust it, to not fear it. And then there is some level of, right, just like this commenter just said, that there is some level of learning where we're not all just like kind of thrown into this huge soup together and just kind of like constantly overwhelmed by each other's whims and emotions, right? There is some discernment, learning, training even that at least for myself, had to happen over years and continues on subtle levels, right? And the first is the recognition that maybe what you're feeling isn't yours, and then just being able to disentangle that, and then recognizing, okay, is there a way that I can continue being open and sensitive without shutting down in this boundaried way that the egoic separate self feels like it needs to in order to protect, once it realizes its boundaries are actually quite fluid energetically, right? So yeah, it definitely is a process, and also something that really will be useful as the world continually goes through this collective of awakening, where all of the density is coming to the surface, right? So it's like so important.
Before we go into the next little topic, because we've got just a few minutes left, and for those that are listening, we've talked about a lot of things, but for whatever reason, what we're about to go into feels like it might be like the most important part of our conversation. And it feels like everything is kind of led up to us holding this next little bit of space. But before we go into that, Tsu-Yin, you have your own practice where people can actually work with you. And will you tell us a little bit about your practice? And Kelly, if you want to run her website, that would be so beautiful.
Yeah, I'd love to. So this practice was born out of coming back. As I was having this spiritual awakening, I had gone through all of the training as a Western, in the Western psychological field, right? And then I had this spiritual awakening, and I was practicing in that field. And then all of a sudden I was like, I gotta just go way deep into this. I'm gonna get rid of everything and go to Asia and become a nun, right? So I did that, and and then through that process, and after I really stabilized in the knowing that I was hoping to stabilize in, and I had this like huge mystical experience in a 2-week silent meditation retreat at Spirit Rock in California, actually. And I just was like, and it was with a monk that had come from Asia, and he was teaching the retreat. And I just was like, wow, like my world, my reality as I'm living it now isn't even worth living if I don't understand the depth of what this experience was pointing to. So it was really, really easy to just be like, all right, chuck it. Like I'm just gonna go deep into the depths of this world. And when I came out of it, and that's a whole other conversation, right? But when I came out of it, I recognized, wow, it's so important to be able to integrate this dimension of knowing into all of the healing work and training that we as Westerners have been attempting to do,
Yeah,
right? To really
absolutely.
bridge that psychological emotional understanding with this other, maybe even more, I don't want to say more real, right? Because we just did all of this at the beginning of the conversation to validate the egoic construct, right?
Yeah.
But to incorporate and expand into these divine aspects, these spiritual aspects, because it's not only so powerful, but it is so freeing and free of fear when
Yes.
you are tapped into that level of your identity, right? So yes, and I recognize that the most accessible way in for a lot of people was to really build on this concept of mindfulness. So my website is mindfullivingcenter.org with dashes in between those words, and just recognizing for people that the way into the path into it for myself and for everybody is actually just like really incremental, really easy, really in the moment, and just like moment by moment by moment by moment, you can access these higher realms of knowing and deeper dimensions of experience, and it doesn't have to be this mystical thing. So
Right.
yeah, I work with all sorts of people in different stages of their journey.
Mm. Thank you. So if you guys are interested at all in working more with Tsu-Yin, I pray that you'll reach out to her. And I've not worked with her personally, but I consider her a friend. And being in her presence is generally very well. And we all know you can feel wellness in a person, right? And I can feel her stabilization and her structure of multidimensional concepts, which brings me to my next inquiry or topic of conversation. Something that I was really impressed by recently. I have been called in to work with people who are losing touch with reality and having spiritual awakenings, but not in a way that they're able to take care of themselves anymore, right? The expansion of multidimensional reality and touching some of these greater things, like they stop brushing their teeth, they stop doing their laundry, they start cleaning their apartment, they start to let the body deteriorate because they've gone so far into the awakening process that we've lost them here, right? But we need to be here in order to bring any of that angelic or multidimensional reality through, is actually in and through the body. So I was working with someone recently and we were at a restaurant and Tsu-Yin came in and sat down with us. And I didn't say anything, but it was pretty obvious where this person was in their journey. And I was so impressed with the way you handled him, with the way you spoke to him, with the questions that you asked. You didn't have any fear, because one of the things that I witnessed people having was when he started going off on a tangent or something that seemed really out there, they would be like, okay, like I'm going to go now. But you were like, tell me more about how you arrived at that idea. And I was like,
Mm.
where have you been all my life, Tsu-Yin?
Yeah, well, I totally forgot about that interaction, and I had such a good time that night. And
Yeah.
I think that the reason that I don't have any fear is because I have really let go of kind of scripts of all kind, right? So all of the old menus are like not even, they're like buried somewhere in a drawer, right? And so here was actually a guy, an experience where it was totally fresh, a totally fresh script. And I love that stuff now, you know. like it is it to some degree it's like, okay, you have the fresh script, and then there's some degree to which it is helpful to have it grounded in some sort of structural human reality in this third dimensional plane, because that's where we reside in. That's where we've come in. That's where we've decided we want to take this incarnation, right? But the lack of script that fellow was expressing was actually really refreshing to
Yes.
me, and didn't instill any fear at all. And so what I experience is that it's so difficult for people to release the script that I just was like, yes, look at this guy. And I also was not responsible for his safety or his getting home in one piece or any of that. So I didn't have that responsibility, that the weight of that. So, but I do want to say that, you know, this topic that we're talking about, this expanding into our multidimensional realities, right, is we're kind of in a new epoch as our species is evolving, right? At least in this age, right? And within this yuga, I guess. And I feel that these conversations, we don't. The thing about not having a script and not having a map is that you also don't have them for these new experiences that we're going to be experiencing, witnessing more and more and more, right? So the first thing is that just, yeah, you have to be steady in your own arc and your own structure and frequency to be able to hold anything that's coming. And that could be like release of Epstein files, or it could be somebody completely losing their grounding in this third dimensional plane in front of you, right? And maybe not just for like a period of time, but maybe that's the way that it's going to go the whole time for the rest of their lives, right? So there's an aspect, I think, that is really important to just predicate all of this with, which I would, it's really important to say. It's that in general, our society does a really good job of pathologizing things that they don't understand, or things that are fearful, or things that are quite powerful, right? Just like the knowledge that we are multidimensional beings. So a lot of people that actually struggle with mental health diagnoses from there's this diagnostic manual called the DSM-5, right? It's like
Yes.
crazy thing. And a lot of that stuff in there is pathologizing things that pathologizing states and people in ways of perception that are quite spiritual, actually, right? A lot of people that have experienced those diagnoses are actually really sensitive to other realms and dimensions.
Yes.
And yet the task in this human lifetime is to keep both feet on the ground. That's why we came into these human bodies. So I don't know. I don't think that there's a real easy answer to any of this, but it's so important to be talking about.
Yeah. The reality of being both multidimensional and also localized. Some of the terminology I sometimes use is I'm simultaneously aware of my localized physical being while simultaneously being aware of my non-local self. And it's my non-local self that, like, if you think of me and suddenly I'm like, Tsu-Yin, like that's my non-localized self. That's our interconnectedness. That's our multidimensionality. I don't share stories like this very often, but there are a few friends that, for whatever reason, when they're singing or praying, I can hear them as if they're in the room with me. And I went through, like, I was like, what are, like, Lumina, are you here right now? Like, what's happening? And I spoke to her the next day and she said, what time did that happen? And I was like, it was around 8 o'clock. She's like, I was singing that song at that time. And I
Wow.
was like, I heard you.
Wow.
And it happened
Incredible.
again with another good sister where I was singing to her and she heard me. But what was
Hmm.
interesting was I felt her as if she was like in the room with me and she was going into a deep prayer. So she was going
Hmm.
into a deep prayer. I suddenly felt her like a little butterfly hovering around me. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to sing her a song. And
Yeah.
I sang her a song and she literally received it.
Ah, beautiful. Yes.
Now, with
Yes.
stuff like you could consider, sir, you're having auditory hallucinations.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes, possibly. And I'm not open to like everyone. It's almost like a frequency based thing. The people I hear somehow are on my frequency,
Mm-hmm,
and I don't
mm-hmm,
hear them all the time. I
mm-hmm,
hear them when they're praying,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and they
Yeah.
hear me when I'm praying. And so it's almost like I'm that multidimensionality, but I could see how that could drive me crazy.
Mm.
Especially if I'm not able to validate, like, hey, did this happen? And they're like, that 100% occurred. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And staying grounded here in those multidimensional experiences while remaining here in my body and doing my laundry.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I love in general that we don't need to make that many distinctions between the mystical dimensions and then the mundane dimensions, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like it all they all are happening and they all are reality for us to contend with, right? So it's like, first of all, I think that I want to highlight something that you said about you feeling like you were able to pick up on these songs when there was a frequency match, right? So that's
Mhm.
the case with everything. There's nothing that
Mhm.
appears in our frequency that can appear there unless we are on some level in agreement or matched to it vibrationally in
Mhm.
some sort of resonance, right?
Mhm.
So there is I do remember going through, so when I was in Asia, I was doing an insane amount of meditation. We had to be in the meditation hall at 3:30 a.m. every day.
Mhm.
And I did go through some states in which I was perceiving like the noise of the world, right? Like everything was just like coming through. And if I didn't have my solid foundation in what I was doing or the guidance of meditation masters,
Mhm.
um, my own smaller egoic framework and perceiving body may have gone crazy, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like if you're perceiving the with the vastness of these dimensions through the lens and the interpretation structure of the ego self, which we have already defined as a protective, fearful self,
Mhm.
right? Then it is going to feel like, holy shit, like you're going to get reactive from that experience,
Mhm.
right? And however, if you are grounded simultaneously, right, the whole time with your multidimensional vastness and this part that's just me and you physically here,
Mhm.
right? Then that's what that that simultaneously knowing is what creates the mooring, right? The anchoring that's
Mhm.
helpful in these situations. I find a lot of the time when people I would not now call them psychotic breaks. I actually think that that's quite pathologizing, but I would say maybe sometimes things get to the level of spiritual emergency,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that usually that there is some sort of tension that has happened between that smaller self that's whose mind is just getting blown maybe, or just overwhelmed or short-circuited, right? And the interface between that and just what all the infinite everything that's out there and all of these dimensional realities. And it is really useful, I think, to not totally discount what's happening in that person's world that's having that experience, because usually it's like totally like if you can if you are open and not fearful, it's actually really potent information that is being received or expressed,
Right.
right? And it usually points to all of the things that are asking for attention or healing within the
Yeah.
person's self and how they perceive everybody around them too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a way to kind of hold that in reverence still,
Yes.
right? While recognizing the necessity to kind of ground and walk this person home in this physical body,
Mm-hmm.
right? That would be the high that could represent the highest potential outcome in that situation, but easier said than done, right?
Yeah, it is time for us to start to close, but I love what you shared around spiritual emergency, and I perceive it the same way. I find the DSM helpful because it does give you a very studied group of people that are showing these kind of characteristics, right? And
Yep.
so it can help us navigate certain things. But I think
Sure.
deciding that someone needs to go in this box or that box, and also from my experience of working with people on a multidimensional or spiritual plane, there are certain circumstances where I would say, yeah, this is a spiritual emergency. And there's many different things that can occur in the relationship between the egoic self, the senses that we have here, our capacity to perceive multidimensionally, and some people starting to pick up on that more recently, and then being like, wow, I'm hearing voices, or wow, I'm experiencing this with my body, or like, why do I feel what you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of I think that being there for each other is a really big deal. I think I was very quiet about my experiences for a very long time. I had a good understanding from the best of my ability about what was occurring, but I was afraid to share with people because I'm like, if I tell you what I'm hearing, I think you might think I'm crazy and like lock me up. So I'm going to keep this to myself.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
very quiet on my path for like 12 years, just
Mm-hmm.
keeping my experiences close to myself, which for me at that time was correct.
Mm-hmm.
And something happened about a year ago where it was like, it's time. You need to speak about these things. You need to share. Other people are also having these experiences and they have
Yeah.
no idea where to turn.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's feeling more important and pertinent to be talking about these things. And I'm
Yes.
not saying I'm the most grounded person or the most responsible person, but I do feel very fortified in my being and I feel capable on the 3D realm. So I feel like I'm currently a good representation of bridging worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
And
Yeah.
so, and I feel the very same way about you. Like you're a very good representation of someone who's very capable at bridging the gap between dimensions and being here in the body and bringing it through in a way that's like, yes, all of that's real. Like, yes, I want to validate your truth. I want to validate your experience. How do we get you also here? So
Mm-hmm.
you feel safe on earth. It's so good. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important that you feel safe right now on earth. And like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the process of bringing that about for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I know we have to wrap up. So maybe the last thing I'll say is that working towards safety within oneself, no matter what dimension one is experiencing, right,
Yeah.
is probably the key, right?
Mhm.
And the way that we do that is to heal our fears and to feel and understand and recognize what they are, even if it's just in this third dimensional reality, right? Even
Yeah.
if my fear is um, I don't want to reach out to that friend because what if she doesn't want to hear from me? Right? And that by itself is the thing. Facing that fear and feeling what that brings up for oneself is the exact thing that will fortify you if, I don't know, in the middle of some sort of like mushroom or ayahuasca ceremony, something like crazy happens and you can't bring it back in, and or it's the same mechanism of facing fear and sitting in one's foundational essence, right? Well, anything could be happening around you, and that is just true in any dimension.
That's true in any dimension. You guys heard it here from Tsu-Yin. Find your center, sit in your center, and that's true in every dimension.
Yes. So that's my takeaway for everybody.
That's a really good takeaway. That's I'm going to be practicing that. I usually do practice that, but I'm going to keep the devotional practice of remaining in my center.
Yes, it is devotional. Yes.
Yeah. Tsu-Yin, thank you so much for your time. It's been really beautiful. And like I say on the end of every episode, thank you for your attention. For all who observed, watched, and listened, even for a few moments. Your attention is so valuable. Thank you for spending your attention here. Thank you for paying your attention to this place. And may you walk through the rest of your day consciously choosing where to pay your attention to. And may it really feed you very well as you practice your devotion. Every decision you make, recognizing we're all interconnected and living in such a way that you're spreading that vibrational beauty through all of the dimensions, or maybe just this one. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Thank you, Arnie. Thank you, Kim Princess. Vivian, love you every time you're here. And I hope to hear you in prayer soon. Peace be with you, everyone.